Dirt underfoot, the smell of smoke, spilled ale, and wet straw. Outside the door there is barking, cursing, the muffled hum of voices. A medieval inn doesn't welcome guests, it swallows them. They don't ask for a name. They look at your boots, your hands, how much you are willing to pay. You enter and time slips like feet in the floor. On the left is a table covered in grease. On the right, a bench with a beggar asleep. In the corner, bone dice, a quiet argument that will become a fight by nightfall. Overhead are wooden beams, smoky, dark as life itself. Smoke drifts through the air like the shadow of a knife. A korchma is not a vacation. It's a crossroads of destinies. Peasants, merchants, mercenaries, tax collectors, fugitives, witches, soldiers. Each has come in for one purpose: to eat, to hide, to learn, to escape, to find. All the roles blend together like odors in the air. This is not a church, not a market, not a home. It's all at once, and nothing is safe. You can hear the grease dripping into the hearth. You hear the beer pouring into the mug. How the woman in the corner laughs, not a laugh, but a threat. The door slams again, as the night thickens outside the windows, and the house itself seems to breathe with you. Watch to the end and you will learn why the tavern was not just a place to eat and drink. It was the center of life, where a man lost his name but could keep warm or stay alive. Korchma falters briefly and wakes up. Hard. It's still dark. It's damp. The air is thick with smoke that had no place to go during the night. There's straw on the floor soaked in beer, urine, and someone's blood. Someone snored under the bench. Someone never got up from the ground. Someone had already left, out the back door without a sound. But the landlady remains, and she is the one who starts the day. Always. Her steps are her first. She moves between the tables, picks up an overturned mug, brushes off a scrap of wool, a cabbage remnant, a charred bone. There is grease on the tables, traces of stale bread, spilled ale, soot. All this must be scraped off, wiped off, burned out of the air with the odor of vinegar and ashes. In a basin with cold water, dry herbs, wormwood, thyme, dried horsetail, they are grinded directly in the palms of their hands, rubbed into the wood like soap. The hearth is a black bowl, a cast iron semicircle with remnants of coals and a haul. It is being cleared away, deeper, down to the stone, to the warm earth. Then, fresh birch bark, twigs, straw, and over it all, movements, precise and silent, like a woman who does it not the first time and not the 100th. Above the hearth is a suspended cauldron. In it is the chowder from yesterday. Beans, cabbage, a little onion, fat off the bone. It's not food, it's a base. In the morning, they'll dilute it with water, throw in a handful of grits, and it'll be fresh again. It'll make steam. And the steam fills the whole room. The smell of smoke and hot chowder is a sign that the day has begun. A tavern in the Middle Ages was not just a drinking establishment. It was a kitchen for those without a hearth, a shelter for strangers, a court when village meetings took place here over a mug, a place of bargains, confessions, conspiracies, and gossip. 14th century chroniclers often refer to inns as a house with an open ear, a place where tidings begin but truth seldom ends. While the owners are washing, cleaning, and rubbing the mugs, the village is waking up. Soon a peasant will come in from the field to sit by the hearth and warm his hands. Behind him will come a tax collector, a tired soldier, a messenger, a false monk, a merchant with a sack of salt who will not ask the price but will haggle all day long. And it starts all over again. Screaming, laughter, bones on the board, a girl with a crooked braid, an old hide at the entrance, a fire in the hearth that can't be put out. Not because you need it for food, but because as long as it burns, you can still live in this place. It's the hostess who fans the flames, literally and figuratively. As long as the hearth is heated, the mugs are glistening, the grass is drying in the corner, and the chowder is bubbling in the cauldron, the tavern is alive. And with it, everything that holds the village together. Rumors, heat, meat, beer, swearing, dirt, and the chance that the morning will live to see the evening. The sun has not yet touched the roofs, and the door of the tavern creaks open. The first peasant enters quietly, as if he does not want to disturb the snoring of the sleeper under the bench, but he is already searching with his eyes for a warmer place. His boots are muddy, his face scorched by the wind, his hands cracked. He has not come to be entertained. He came to listen to the silence where rumors are born. A korchma is not just a place to get poured. It is a social node. All invisible lines intersect here. Fields, forests, tracks, fairs, churches, and gallows. Who's been to town will tell you. Whoever saw a feudal lord's troop on the road will warn you. He who's heard of the 3 days' labor will give you a hint. There are no announcements in the tavern, but they know more than the town hall. Morning is a time for our own, for those who live nearby. The peasants come one by one, little by little, some from the field, some from the well, some on purpose because they say the miller slept with the blacksmith's wife. They sit down, silent. The hostess pours a weak ale, frothy, slightly sour, cloudy, heats up the rest of the chowder. She takes out bread, dark, dense, with flecks of husks and perhaps clay grits from the old oven. Food's not the point, it's about hearing. They whisper about the tribute, about the collector coming, about the missing chickens, about who hid the salt, who paid less, who gave birth again, and whose child died of fever. It's all passed in low voices, through the steam over the mug, between sips, between the lines. According to the descriptions of chroniclers of the 14th or 13th centuries, the taverns of the Middle Ages were an integral part of the community structure. In England, inns were called alehouse, inn; in France, auberge; in Russia, canteen yard or harchevnya. And everywhere in village life they performed the same function: an information hub, a gathering point, a place of memory. Where there were no schools, hearing was the only textbook. Where there was no paper, language replaced the archive. They said everything, but not everything out loud. Somebody knows that the tribute collector drinks himself into oblivion. Someone saw a monastic novice taking money from an artisan. Someone has heard that war is near. But you can only talk about it in the tavern, and only in the morning, before the shouting gets in your ears, before the knives come out of their sheaths. They're sitting tight on the benches, no one with their backs to the door. Everybody's looking at the entrance, in case someone else comes in. Suddenly they'll know a name. Maybe they'll get news that could change everything. For now they listen. Sometimes they look at each other, and only the master, as always, has already understood everything. He doesn't ask, he pours, because as the beer flows, so do the words. And in a tavern, a word can be worth more than silver, or a head. A morning at the tavern is the moment when the life of the village comes together in one place, in one breath, in one mug. As the smoke from the hearth rises to the ceiling, rumors float around the room, invisible, sticky, dangerous. And the peasant sipping his beer absorbs them, just like heat, food, and the smell of smoke. Because he who knows first lives longer. Smoke stretches to the ceiling. In the center there is heat, mugs, chowder, hoarse laughter. And in the corners, silence, tight, thick. They don't raise their voices there. They speak with lips, eyes, gestures. They decide what is not to be heard. Every corner is a separate world, a place where words are worth more than wine, and silence is worth more than any gold. Under the stairs is an old place, rubbed with boots. That's where they trade salt, a flatbread for a handful of onions, a bag of beans for a copper nail. Sometimes a word for life, all from memory. Weight is not weighed, but guessed. Trust is not given, but bought. The tavern was not a market, but it was here that the most delicate transactions took place. Not those that go across the fair stalls, but those that live between the lines. An exchange in kind, a favor for a roof, a promise for a mug. In the letters of the bishops of the 14th century, there are instructions to forbid traders to meet in the corners of drinking houses, where livestock, hides, and secret money change hands without consent or witnesses. In the corners, they negotiate about people. Which fugitives are hiding in the neighboring parish? Who is hiring men in town? Who is looking for hands not for the field? Here they find those who can keep quiet or speak, who can carry or clean up. It all depends on the voice and the price. One holds a sack of salt, another holds a leather purse tied with a string. Next to it is a hide tied with twine. There is silence at the table. Only fingers tapping on wood, only eyes run over. Occasionally someone gets up, leaves, comes back through the back door. Nothing is said, but everything is understood. The innkeeper sees everything, but she doesn't interfere. She knows that if you want your house to last, don't look in the corners. Just pour, just serve, just clean up afterward. In a tavern, it's not cleanliness that matters, but balance. Between hearing and silence, between profit and blood. Even fates are decided here. Where the new picker will lie, when it's best to run away, who sold another man's horse, who gave birth to a child not by her husband, and how to make sure that person doesn't live to see the dawn. There are not only silver pieces in corners, but also wishes, sometimes as black as the night outside the door. Archaeological finds of taverns and inns in European cities, from York to Lubeck, show a division of space, a central area with hearth and feasting, and darkened corners, sometimes with niches and wooden partitions. Broken buckles, coins, knives, and cup fragments are found there. Traces of deals, quarrels, and secret meetings. There are no loud toasts in the corner of the tavern. There are no songs. There's a decision, made in the semi-darkness, sealed with a look, and remembered, sometimes on a blade. And if the whisper sounds too quiet, then it is more dangerous than any cry by the hearth, because it's where the darkest things are that the real thing moves, and the inn knows it. That's why it's silent. The heat from the hearth is heavy, viscous. It does not warm, it suffocates. The kitchen space in the tavern is inseparable from the hall. It's all one room. Only near the walls, in the depths, where the walls are charred and soaked with grease, there is a gurgling cauldron with which the day begins, and on which everything rests. The hearth here always works, never goes out. It only smolders at night, and in the morning it burns again. Above it is an iron chain suspended from a rotten beam, and on it is a smoky pot. It's not soup or food, but what's left over from the previous day. The same broth has been simmering for 24 hours. Cabbage today, beans yesterday, a goat bone the day before. It's all boiling, simmering, disintegrating. It tastes like ash and grease, but it smells like food, and that's enough. Often the base of the chowder is bones, chicken, sheep, even pork. It's all about the veins, something to boil off. Bones give flavor, and they'll chew on them till they squeak, till they're dark. They add beans, if they have them, or cabbage, or a bunch of onions. Sometimes they add grits, but rarely. Grits are expensive. The owner spares it. The brew turns cloudy, dark, with transparent drops of fat around the edge. There are crumbs, feathers, sometimes something that is better not to know the name of. Served in wooden bowls. The walls are smooth from fingers, cracked at the edges. Spoons are the same, rough, wide, with long handles. The rich eat from clay. The poor drink directly from the cauldron with a mug. The dishes are not washed. They are wiped down with a cloth, or just licked. Sometimes the hostess dips it in a bucket of soapy water, if there is soap. The bread is a separate story. It's black, hard as bark, baked 3 days ago, sometimes even earlier. You don't cut it, you break it, or split with a knife. Inside, it's not a crumb, but a lumpy mass. It absorbs the chowder like a sponge. Dip, chew, swallow. Even dry bread is a luxury. It's cherished. Sometimes dried on a stone to keep it from rotting. Sometimes roasted over a charcoal fire to bring back the softness. If it's a holiday, there'll be meat, a piece of chicken or pork, but more often it's just a pork rind, small with charred skin, or a strip of lard sliced for everyone. They don't give it with the dish, they give it as a separate award. They put it in the palm of your hand, or right on the bread. The hostess cooks without words. She doesn't taste, she knows. The spoon is like an extension of her hand. In a bag behind her back, salt, a handful of pepper, old garlic. Sometimes she throws a handful into the cauldron, sometimes not. The smell determines who stays and who comes back. Food historians note, in the taverns of the 14th, 15th centuries, the food was monotonous but stable. The basis was chowder on water, with cabbage, beans, turnips. Bread was baked from rye, oats sometimes, from flour with impurities of swede, crushed grains, even bark. The inventories of the taverns mention a meager supply of meat, fat, onions, garlic, salt, honey, and all this was used cyclically without excesses. The kitchen is noisy, the boiler is boiling, the fire is roaring, the clatter of a knife against a board, the slurping of a spoon in the brew, the rustle of bags of cereal, the shuddering sound of a hostess turning a piece of lard over the coals. Sometimes a squeal, sometimes laughter, but more often silence, working, concentrated. Every guest knows that as long as smoke is coming from the kitchen, the tavern is alive. The food here is not good, but it's there, and that's enough. Because the brew in the cauldron is not just a meal, it's a sign that life goes on, that the hearth is burning, that you can eat, drink, fight, play, and know that today you are fed. And in times like these, that's almost happiness. The boards are rough, darkened by decades of grease, wine, sweat, and blood. Crumbs, straw, feathers in the crevices, knife marks and burnt candles along the edges. These tables have seen no tablecloths, only elbows, only mugs, only palms that have been beaten, cut, held, played, silenced. No one sits behind them by rank. Whoever has time is the master. It all starts with beer. It is served in heavy wooden mugs, some of which are bound with iron. The beer is weak, cloudy, slightly warm, with a foam reminiscent of fermented water. It is brewed right here in the courtyard from barley, with the addition of herbs, wormwood, nettles, moss. They don't drink it for fun. Beer is like bread here. Cheap, accessible, safe. Water can kill. Beer can't. Tables don't eat in silence, they argue. Mumbling, interrupting, shouting. Some complain that the miller has stolen some of the flour again. Someone swears he saw the king's tithe collector hide the tithe in his saddlebag. Someone says he heard that in a neighboring village, all the men have been taken into the army. Everything is intertwined. Personal, economic, political. Words fly fast, heavy, dangerous. There are no classes in a tavern, only seats. A peasant can sit next to a merchant, an apprentice with a beggar pilgrim, a tax collector with a traveling actor, sometimes with a mercenary whose face you can't see from under his hood. And as long as there's a little left in the cups, everyone's sort of equal. Sort of. But the lines are thin. One wrong look and the whole room goes silent. A moment and someone jumps up, knocking over a mug, followed by the clatter of a bench, the clang of metal. Fists, a knife. The mistress knows that if the dispute reaches the kitchen, there will be blood. If he stays at the table, he can wait it out. Such outbreaks are the norm. According to medieval chronicles, more people died in inn brawls than in the field. The table is the arena. Where you can't punch in the face, you punch in the words. Where there's no judgment, it's a bench. Where they drink together, they die faster. In urban and rural taverns of the 14th century, as stated in the municipal regulations, stipulated places for sitting people of different dignity. But in practice, everything was decided by force, or money, or both. The tables know everything. Where a man sat before he died, where a debt was played, where an appointment was made, who lost his wife at dice, who promised to return but left in the night. You don't wash them, just scrape them with a knife. The smell remains. Sour beer, soot, meat, blood. It's embedded in the wood, in your breath, in your memory. Sometimes someone sings. Sometimes they roll dice. Sometimes they pray. Sometimes they stare at the bowl, at the floor, at the eyes across the table. Each table has its own rhythm. Each table has its own story and its own danger. In a tavern, the table is not the furniture. It's a place of action. It is the boundary between the word and the fist, between thirst and anger, And as long as they sit at it, life goes on. It may be rough, it may be dirty, but if the table is empty, it means someone's gone or won't be back. Because here, amidst the smoke and the shouting, even a mug of beer can be the last. As the sun sinks below the horizon and the locals, drunk and argumentative, go home, the second shift begins in the tavern. Quiet but attentive. It's the hour of the strangers, the ones who don't say hello by name, those who don't ask but only look, those who come with the road on their shoulders and silence in their eyes. The inn is the only place where a stranger can disappear. Not in the woods, not in the fields, not on the road, but here, with a mug of beer under a low ceiling, on a hard mattress among those who don't ask questions. Because no one wants to be asked questions. Someone has come from the fair. He carries a bundle of furs, several flasks of oil, pieces of tar, and cloth. The merchant speaks with an accent, hands in the folds of his cloak. He knows a night on the road is a risk, and the fee is only a few coins. Someone is a wanderer. He won't say where he's from. His robe is shabby, but his knife is sharp. In his hand is a goblet he doesn't drink. Behind his back is a sack with metal clattering. Maybe it's an artisan, or maybe it's someone who's looking, or someone who is looking for him. Someone's a messenger, a broken buckle on a boot, dirt from the road fresh, a look that clings to faces. He eats fast, drinks little. He falls asleep with his dagger under the straw. In the morning he's gone, sometimes before dawn, sometimes forever. The innkeepers in the tavern are shadows. They bring with them rumors, sometimes gold, sometimes death. According to the old criminal records of London, York, and Cologne, it was in tavern rooms that most night murders took place. No witnesses, no trace, just a bloodstain in the straw and the question in the landlady's eyes. Who was that man? Unanswered. The conditions are simple. The bunting is made of straw, sometimes just planks, sometimes a bench by the hearth. In winter, a woolen blanket. In summer, burlap. For an extra coin, you can get a candle. For 2, a private corner. For 3, a night without neighbors. But they ask you to leave the tavern before dawn, always. Women for lodging is a separate topic. Widows, runaway maids, herbalists. Some are looking for a one-night stand. Some for a new life. Sometimes a child in her arms. Sometimes it's under her heart. Sometimes a knife in her boot. And it's all a normal part of an evening tavern. They sit at the tables in silence. They nod to the hostess. They lower their eyes. They drop a coin, not clinking, but quietly. And they go to the back room, or to the hayloft, or just stay in the corner, not showing they're listening. The landlady knows everything, but she doesn't say anything. Because strangers bring silver, and silver keeps the roof on, keeps the cauldron hot, keeps the smell of meat in the hall. Without customers, there's no profit. And without profit, the tavern becomes a barn. And in the Middle Ages is the last line between life and the road. It's a place to hide, wait it out, start over, or disappear. And as long as the guest remains silent and pays, no one cares about his name. Because a name is what you leave on the outside. And on the inside, there's only the road, the body, and the mug on the table. And, if you're lucky, the morning. In the noise, in the heat, in the drunken voices, in the odors of sour beer, smoked lard, and human flesh, the woman in the tavern is not a guest, not a hostess, not a servant. She is an equal part of this place, a quiet force holding the hall unarmed, but with fire in her hands. Where men argue loudly, she notices who first twitches a knife. Where guests forget names, she remembers debts. Where the night gets dangerous, she's the one who decides who gets out alive. The Korchmark is the heart of the establishment, not the cook, not the innkeeper, not the guards. She knows the value of every person at the table. Who came in when? How much they drank? Who to serve? Who to refuse? She has no notebooks, but her memory is more accurate than any register. She doesn't raise her voice, but one look from her and 2 drunks shut up, or stand up, or disappear. She carries the whole tavern on her shoulders. She collects the chowder, fixes the clay mug, washes the blood off the walls, hides the herbs in a knot under a shelf, carries the body out the back door. Not because she's used to it, but because it's work, a life, a condition. And a woman who survives a year in a tavern knows more about people than any judge and believes less in penance than any priest. The tavern wenches aren't concubines, they work, but not just with their hands. Their laughter is a weapon, their dance is a cover, their gaze is a lock to a man's wallet, to his pocket, to his intentions. They bring beer and bread, laugh at jokes, tease and lead away, but in the folds of her apron is a sharp bone needle. Under her skirt, a knife. On my wrist, a bruise from the day before yesterday. They know how to recognize who came in with money and who came in with a knife, who's come to play and who's come to kill. You can't fool them, but you can try. Then the guest will wake up in the gutters, unconscious and out of coins, or not at all. The historical records of the judiciary in the late Middle Ages are full of references to inn women associated with poisonings, disappearances, denunciations, and witchcraft. In the criminal records of 14th century London, women working in taverns were suspected of the arts of seduction and poison, and in rural France and Germany, tavern keepers were accused of witchcraft more often than witch doctors. The witch in the tavern isn't the one who brews potions. It's the one who knows too much, sees too clearly, keeps her mouth shut too soon. Sometimes she has a bag of dried herbs. Sometimes she has dried teeth. Sometimes she has nothing but a look that strips you bare. Sometimes one of them disappears, doesn't come to the hearth, doesn't sing in the evening. Some say she's gone. Some say she's run away. The landlady is silent. In the kitchen, the cauldron smolders. The smell doesn't change. There's a cloth in the corner. The next day, a new one appears, the same one, but not the same, and no one asks. The women in the tavern are a nerve, fear, and control. As long as they are serving food, stroking the tablecloth, smiling at a stranger, the tavern works. But if their laughter fades, if their eyes grow colder, someone has crossed the line. And when the woman in the tavern disappears, something important goes with her: balance, peace, or someone's voice. Because here the woman is not an ornament. She's a mechanism, sharp, worn, and always ready to stop time, or extend it, whoever needs it. As dusk approaches, the tavern changes its face. In the morning it is a hearth, in the afternoon a dining room, and in the evening an arena. The space shrinks. New figures appear in the shadows. The air is damp with breath, steam from bodies, the smell of salty sweat, hot beer, smoking meat, and old fat. The tavern is ready for the night, and the night is ready for her. Torches are lit, one by the door, one on the counter, one in the far corner. The resin bundles crackle and smoke, throwing jagged light on the walls. Shadows come to life, and everything that seemed dirty and poor in the daytime now becomes warm, haunted, witchy. Music appears uninvited. Someone pulls out a shabby violin, someone pulls out a blowing instrument or a wooden flute. Sometimes it's just a voice, hoarse, pulling an ancient ballad about a knight and a witch, about doom and guilt. Songs in a tavern are not for celebration. It's not to hear thoughts or voices or someone screaming in the street. The games begin at the far table. The cards are hand-carved, stained with wine, grease, and time. The figures are no longer recognizable, but everyone knows. A cross is king, a smear is queen. Bone cubes with a rough surface, erased from endless throws. They are thrown on the board, on the table, on the hand. Each throw is like a shot. Each number is a chance, or failure. It's all on the line. Today, a mug of beer. Tomorrow, boots. The day after that, a knife. Sometimes a hide. Sometimes a bone from a roast goose. Sometimes a woman. Sometimes a life. And if someone plays too loud, he's already lost. And if someone plays too quietly, they're dangerous. Historians note that in the taverns of Europe, gambling was an integral part of evening life. According to city statutes and royal decrees of 13th or 14th centuries, gambling was allowed with restrictions. For commoners, no more than 6 pence. For artisans, no more than 1 throw a day. But in village and roadside taverns, no one counted. The stakes get higher with each cup. One man wins a bowl of chowder. Another loses his last coin. Someone yells, You switched the die! And that's when the hand with the mug goes to his face. Someone grabs a knife. Someone runs out the back door. Sometimes the argument ends quickly. Sometimes it leaves a bloody trail on the bench. Sometimes a body at the door before dawn. And some people don't talk and wins everything. One by one, slowly, precisely, as if he knows where the line will fall. He's not loved, but he's played. Because to not play is to admit fear. And in a tavern, you can't forgive that. There's a girl singing in the corner. She dances slowly, treading the boards as if she feels neither noise nor eyes. Her dress is ragged, her braid is down, her steps are soft. Someone claps, someone whistles, someone is hiding their eyes. Because it's night. And at night, even the weak become dangerous. Everything shakes, the lights, the mugs, the cards, the voice, the flames. Everything shakes. Steam, heat, heat, heat. The tavern is as hot as a forge, and just as dangerous. It's where decisions are forged, and destinies are broken. As long as the bone cubes rattle, as long as they drink and argue, as long as they sing and whisper, the night lives, and the tavern with it. It swallows the screams, erases the footprints, hides the shadows, and in the morning, no one will remember who shouted the loudest. Only the smell will remain, and the stain on the floor, and a crack in the wall, because a night in a tavern is more than a night out. It's a test. Whoever can wakes up. Whoever can't stays under the table, or under the horses. By morning, the tavern looks like a battlefield after a retreat. The buzz has died down, the mugs are empty, the embers smolder in the hearth, and the air is taut as a belt around the throat. There is no peace in this silence. There is fatigue, lingering anxiety, and the residue of what happened between the song and the shout. There are people on the floor. Some snore with their arms spread, some curl up against the wall, some lie motionless. One without boots, another without a belt, a third without a pulse, and only the barker moves between them, noiselessly, precisely as through a temple. It doesn't sweep up dirt, it sweeps up footprints. The ash and straw have soaked up blood, beer, vomit, and grease. She rakes it all up with a wooden broom, tosses it into a bucket that hasn't smelled of water in a long time. Spilled chowder is mixed with ashes, crumbs with teeth. Somewhere under the table is a knife. The hostess picks it up silently and puts it aside. It will be useful tomorrow. Those who are not awake are carried out. No words, no announcements. They wrap them in sacks, put them on stretchers, cover their faces. They take them out the back door to a place where rotting straw, broken dishes, dead poultry are piled up. Sometimes they leave them there until morning, sometimes burned in a pit, sometimes left by the roadside. It all depends on who it was and what they left behind. Sources of Inquisition protocols, city chronicles, and monastery reports of the 14th and 15th centuries regularly record cases of night incidents in taverns, where bodies were found in the ditch behind the yard, in the stable under the cart, near the walls of the church with a cut wound in the side. No investigations. The Korchma is the territory between the law and the road. There are no rights here. There are only results. The door's locked. On the hook. A bar. Sometimes on a bar nailed to the frame. No one comes in at this time. Whoever's late sleeps outside. Whoever knocks gets silence or a look with a knife. Because to let a stranger in at this hour is to allow the death that awaits beyond the threshold. The landlady checks the walls, picks up things, examines the tables. She finds an abandoned purse, a scrap of letter, a dark stain that cannot be cleaned. Her movements are slow. She's in no hurry. Everything must be ready by morning, not for the sake of cleanliness, but for continuity. The fire is almost out, but the heat still lingers. It hangs in the air like smoke, dead but alive. It smells of soot and grease and death. The mixture is familiar. It is not feared, it is respected. The night in the tavern ends not with dawn, but with ritual. As long as the bodies are taken out, the knives are put away, the door is closed and the blood is trampled, we can move on. Until the next night, until the next bone, until the next death. Until then, all is quiet. There's no one, not inside, no one outside, just the inn, heavy, warm, empty, ready to open its eyes again. when the sun comes up, or sooner. The light doesn't come back immediately. First, a blue haze in the cracks of the roof, then a thin beam between the boards of the door, then a creak, the first, cautious, and the tavern wakes again, or pretends to sleep. The hearth is still warm. The ashes are still warm. The smoke rises in a sluggish column. In the cauldron are the remnants of the night's brew, greasy water, cabbage veins, beans, clots of fat on the surface. Without looking, the hostess pours in a pinch of salt. The noise of a spoon in the cauldron is already a ritual. As the chowder boils, the tavern comes to life. The floor is straw soaked with sweat, urine and wine, a boot mark somewhere, a tooth mark somewhere. The sacks in the corner are bunched up, someone else snoring against the wall. No one touches him. Maybe he's breathing. Maybe he's not. The sun will decide when it rises higher. The benches are put back. Tables are wiped down with a wet rag rubbed with wormwood. Mugs are lined up on the counter. Cracked ones are glued with beeswax. Bowls are turned upside down to hide what they haven't had time to clean. The whole room sighed and fell silent in anticipation. Korchmark returns to his place with a rooted expression on her face, one that doesn't change day or night. She walks around the room, picking up what's left: a dice, a scrap of handkerchief, a knife forgotten on a bench. It all goes into a chest under the bar. In it is the story of the last 2 weeks, or years. The first to arrive are the silent ones. The old man who is missing a couple teeth but has enough memory for all his debts. The teenager who is looking for work. A widow who sleeps under a cart. The shepherd who loses a coin again but buys chowder. They are all like the ashes of a hearth, a little damp, a little alive, but still usable. The women who worked through the night are serving food again, as if they hadn't danced on the table, as if they hadn't fought off someone's hand, as if they hadn't heard the wheezing outside the door. In their faces, no complaint, no surprise, only the knowledge that everything would start again, the same as always. Medieval inns knew no weekends. According to monastic records and 15th century city scrolls, taverns were open from first light to last guest. A tavern could be closed only because of an epidemic, and that if there were too many dead. The fire in the hearth burned for 24 hours. They didn't put it out because to rekindle it would be a waste of time. And time is revenue. Soon the mugs will be rattling again. Rumors will start. The game will begin. Some will come back wearing the same clothes they left. Someone with a new scar. Some will be different. The sun will rise and the hall will fill with voices. The hostess won't even notice someone throwing another bone. Someone will hit the table again. How again someone won't leave. The tavern is awake. She waits. The day for her is not a beginning, but an inertia, an eternal circle. Bone cubes, straw, chowder, dirty hands, a hard look in a door that opens again. And if the inside smells of food and not death, then everything is ready. Another morning, same story, new faces, same stakes, and no one's surprised, because it's the same as always, again and again. A korchma is not just a house of food and drink. It is the pulse of medieval life, beating through mud, fear, hunger, bones, and hops. There was no peace here, but there was warmth. There was no safety, but there were walls. It was a place where people survived, hid, argued, sang, died, and where every day began the same way it did yesterday, with ashes and chowder. And if you listen, the tavern speaks. Through the creaking floors, the clinking of mugs, the whispering in the corner. Subscribe to the channel if you are close to this world. Raw, rough, alive. This is not about the romance of the Middle Ages. It's about the truth, about how it really was, and why many people didn't live to see the morning.